On episode 7 of Lady K Sailing, Candace comes home from work and I surprise her with a boat present she really wasn't expecting. We're going to go over our monthly budget, talk about our finances, and show you where we stand with everything financially at this point. And we're going to explain how we're actually going to get to the Caribbean. Hope you enjoy.
Come on away the anchor, we're casting off the line. We're about the destination, the journey is divine. Welcome to the story of living our bold life. We're doing it our own way on Lady K. We're sailing away on Lady K.
Candace is going to be super stoked. I'm in the garage waiting for her to get home from work, and I bought something today that she did not expect. We have been assuming we would not have a windlass for our trip. We'd be pulling the anchor up by hand, and that sucks, but go small, go simple, go now, right? Windlasses are expensive, and we've been trying to leave August 1st, which, I mean, we're doing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And we didn't really have it in the budget to spend $1,000 on a windlass. So I actually got up this morning, and I have like 8 or 10 things on my list that we need to buy, like really expensive stuff. And every morning I scour the internet for local ads, trying to find those 8 or 10 things for cheaper than retail. One of them is a windlass, and it just so happened that a guy in Hamilton, about 3 hours away, posted one this morning, and I was the first one to reply, and he said if I could get there by 10 a.m., I could have it. And this was at like, I don't know, 8:30 when I messaged him, and Hamilton's like 3 hours, and he messaged with about 2.5 hours to go before 10 a.m. So I was like, okay, what's the address? And he sent it to me right away. And I said, okay, I'm on my way. I'll be there by 10, I promise. So I ended up with like 2 hours to make a 3-hour drive. But I made it, and I bought the windlass. And Candace doesn't know that. And a windlass is a big, big deal for both of us. So I think she's going to be super stoked. So I sent her an email when I got home, and I wrapped it, and I like put it in a bow and everything. And we're going to see how she responds to said windlass, which is going to be really cool. I think she's going to really like it. We'll see. So we're just waiting for her to get home.
Oh, good. Thanks. Can I bet you what it is? I have a feeling I know what it is. I got my new sink.
You think it's a sink?
Yes.
A sink?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go unwrap your sink.
Only guess that because you sent me pictures this morning.
Oh, yeah, no, that
But
was
I
just a picture I
also-
found on the internet.
But I also, I bet Brandy $10 it was a sink.
Okay.
She didn't shake on it.
She's wrong. Or she's right. Nice bum.
Thanks.
Your present.
It's my sink.
Stop poking, you just have to unwrap it. No, you have to cut the ribbon. Or just... I didn't do a very good job with the ribbon, apparently.
It's better than a sink! I'm so glad Brandy doesn't take bets with me.
That's good, yeah?
That's good, yeah! Oh, fuck yes! My arms are so happy right now.
It'll probably save our lives at some point. love you.
I love you. Oh, yay. Okay, let's go put it on the boat.
Okay. It's snowing though.
It's quite sunny out right now, actually.
It's quite sunny and snowy. We have a windlass.
I'm so excited. Oh, suburbia. Sorry.
I think it's important to say that when selling our lives, which is sort of like our thing, how we've lived for the last few years, it's all for sale. So this house is something we rent. We didn't buy a house because it didn't make sense to buy a house when we knew we'd be leaving.
Could have easily taken out. But we could have easily just taken out a mortgage or something to buy a bigger boat.
Yeah.
Which would likely be more comfortable and, you know, all the IKEA furnishings and whatnot, but that's not us.
No, it's not.
I think we're very do-it-yourself, like,
Yeah.
kind of start here. Maybe, I don't know what the scale is, but start at the bottom and work our way up. Yeah.
I think one thing I want to talk about is how we got here, and largely, like about I don't know, like 8 years ago, I was following Wind Traveler and Brittany and Scott putting out blog posts when they were in Chicago, getting ready to leave, and that was super cool. And it was like, are they? And this is a long time ago. This is before Delos, and this is before Uma, and this is before all the big shows on YouTube. So Wind Traveler wasn't even doing YouTube, they were doing blog posts. And Brittany was writing about getting the boat ready, which boat they're going to buy, all the things that they did. And I was following back then. So as it sort of went along, a few years after, they ended up leaving Chicago. And they circled around into, you know, Lake St. Clair, where we are.
Yeah.
And then down by Detroit and through Lake Erie. And then they went to the Caribbean. And they ended up like owning or managing a charter business in Tortola in the British Virgin Islands in Nanny Key. And like they didn't have anything going for them. They didn't, like, when everybody asked us, what are you guys going to do for money, we're kind of like, I don't know.
Figure it out.
Yeah, like they figured it out. Delos figured it out. Uma figured it out. Like, I think if yeah.
Well, I kind of want to sidetrack on that because, for all we know, they had the money saved. I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
That's something that I think we want to lean more towards, is being a little more transparent with the funds and
Yeah.
what we're starting with and what we're spending as we
How
go.
much we have
And
left.
A lot of
year from now.
people don't do that. Like
Right.
you can budget this and budget that, but what do they already have in the kitty?
Yeah, what did you have when
Before-
you left? Did you have $100,000? Did you have $200,000?
I'm calling you out, guys.
I think our intention right now, we have $2,000. Like, I can actually let me look on my phone and I'll show you what we have in our bank account, because it's
Oh, plus the 100.
so we have $1,981 in our bank account. I don't know if you can see that, but $1,981.92, and it is
Plus about $200 that we have on us.
we
that
have some
to
cash,
deposit.
yeah, from
So,
things we've been selling, because we're selling the whole house.
just over $2,000.
So we have like just over $2,000, and we have until August. So it's January right now. It's the end of January. So we have February, March, April, May, June, July to make money.
Dude.
One of the big questions in the world is, how much does it cost to do this? And the correct answer is however much you have. And like,
you can say whatever you want.
yeah, and a lot of the people are like, well, what do you spend per month? And there are people out there that are spending $500 per month. There are people out there that are spending $50,000 per month. What you spend each month is entirely up to you and how you want to live. In our current, another thing they say is to gauge how much you're going to spend every month is how much do you spend now on land, because it'll be comparable. So groceries, $300 a month.
Yeah.
Well, with the
Yeah.
kids all the time,
All the-
and buying from expensive places in town, $300 a month on groceries, and then we're not gonna have rent anymore. We're not gonna have car insurance or any of that stuff, so that's out. The other utilities, all that stuff. So you can count on us spending $300 a month on food. That's,
Yeah.
I mean that just is what it is. That's food. That's all the other things. So the other stuff that'll bring us up is if we tie up in a marina, that'll cost money if we're not anchoring because the weather's foul or whatever. That'll bring us up a little bit every month. And marinas are as much as $50 or $60 a night, which we're going to avoid at all costs. We're not going to do the marina thing. Some people do. Some people go into the marina every night, and I mean it's safe. You don't have to anchor. You don't have to worry. You can pull in and tie to a dock. You can plug your electricity in and your water in, and life is good. But we're going to avoid that. So our intention is to spend $1,000 a month. And if 300 of that is food, and let's say 200 of that is diesel for the motor when we need to use it, we're going to set aside probably 150 or 200 for boat maintenance and boat parts, which will be important. I think Delos said 1.5% of the boat value is spent per year on maintenance, which is really low. It's a low number.
Yeah.
And we have like a $30,000 or $35,000 boat. So if we spend $300, $400, or $500 a year maintaining it, that's cool.
Yeah. It's not bad.
Yeah.
I think Delos, for the most part, they do all the maintenance themselves.
They do, yeah.
So that
They did the
also
rigging.
saves
It was
money.
big.
Yeah.
And that's an expeditionary boat. I mean, Delos is going through Somalia, crossing the Indian Ocean, and right now they've just crossed the Atlantic Ocean. We don't have any intention to do any of that stuff. We're gonna, in our 35-foot
Winky,
use,
winky.
it's a Sparkman Stephen designed boat, which means it's extremely ocean worthy and very tough and probably a lot stronger than we are. But we don't ever intend to sail across the middle of the ocean in this 35-foot boat. That would be silly. Like, we'll island hop down the Caribbean. We might make the passage from the Caribbean islands up to southern Africa, maybe, and that's not an extravagant passage, which I think is fine.
I think we're going to be staying put a little longer than, maybe even long enough that we get a better boat. I don't know.
I think if we find money, which I'm now accredited as a marine surveyor, so I can do boat surveys, which is like a home inspection except for your boat. And people pay like $800 for one of these inspections. So if we can do one or two of those a month, it pays for everything. Assuming we can live off $1,000 a month, which I think that we can.
And with my sewing, because I am going to have my industrial machine, which is a Barracuda. Barracuda. So I've repaired our sails, others' sails. I made our Dodger. Was going to do the Bimini, but that's been scratched for, you'll see later. A staff pack, that's the next big task. I've got a basement full of cushions, not just for our boat, but one of our fellow club member boats, and they're kind of treading them a little bit. Very particular cushions, but I'm gonna do it, and so there's extra cash coming in there.
One of the things that we want to do on Lady K Sailing is show you how much it actually costs, what our budget is, how much we'll be spending, so that other people that might want to follow and do kind of the same thing we're doing understand what sort of money you need and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to take a quick look at our spreadsheet that we've been using for the last couple of months. The first section here is money we intend to make from our paychecks that are coming in. This is money that we are devoting to sort of the cause. This is outside of our normal rent and our normal utilities and all that kind of stuff. So from our paychecks over the next several months, There's going to be $1,500, $1,300, $1,900, depending on what month it is and what's going on that month. This is all money going toward the kitty, and the kitty is sort of what you call the purse of money that you're going to take on your boat with you. So this all goes toward the kitty. There's a bunch of money here through to the beginning of summer. There's going to be a little bit more after this, but we're not counting it in because we know there's going to be a bunch of expenses that we don't expect. So there's that. We're playing it really, really conservative with all these numbers. We're going to sell my car for $4,000. We're going to sell her car for $3,000. Again, conservative numbers. They're probably worth a lot more than that, but just to go on the conservative side, we want to play it safe. We got another bed to sell, couch, TV. Somebody offered to buy all my tools. He's already paid me most of the money. There's still $250 left owing. Get $1,000 for the lawnmower. We got a riding lawnmower, vacuum, bedroom set. Then the other couch, some tables that we made, computer desk, and then I'm getting a kickback on my motorcycle insurance because I canceled it halfway through the year. So there'll be another $250 there. So that's just all money that's sort of coming in over the course of the next 6 months before we actually leave. So it's a lot of money. We're in pretty good shape there. We don't have any debt right now. We have about $3,000 in the bank, so add that to all this. And then the next section over here is the stuff that we need for the boat. This is where it obviously gets expensive. Number one on the list, there's about $6,300 worth of stuff that we need. Number one on the list is the composting toilet because we're ripping out our existing septic infrastructure. It needs to be replaced anyway. It's in really rough shape, so we're just going to jump over to a composting head and make more room on the boat that way. The problem with the Nature's Head is it's very expensive. It's the best one from all of our research, and it's the one that'll provide the most comfort and the least disgustingness as far as these toilets go, so we want to go with that one. But in Canadian dollars, after shipping, we're looking at like $1,600, which is brutal. Then one of the areas we're really not messing around is in the anchor. So a Rokna 25 kilogram anchor, which is about 55 pounds, is like 2 sizes bigger than we need. It's like an $800 anchor, but it will keep us safe, and it'll probably save our lives at some point. Hopefully it doesn't have to, but we don't want to have to risk it. Right now we have a pair of 35-pound anchors, which we just want bigger. We need an iPad, like a really good one with cellular for our navigation suite. We already have a few. We have a little GPS. We have a couple smaller things, but we want one good big iPad that we'll use as our primary. We'll have 3 or 4 backups. Anchor chain, we're planning on spending about $500 on 3/8 anchor chain. The solar system, actually I already bought the solar panels in our last episode, so now we just need another $500 to buy the controller and the wiring. And then a few other little things. $350 to get our passports renewed for 10 years. We need $350 for 2 more batteries. Registering the boat costs $250. We need a water filter under the kitchen sink, water jugs, diesel jugs, VHF antenna, fuel filters, some spares, oil filters. We got to paint the bottom. We're just using cheap ablative black bottom paint. We can get it for $80 a can. Some sail tape, new zincs. We're going to use magnesium zincs because they're the most appropriate for what we're doing. We need 80 feet of VHF cable, a new masthead light. We got to replace one of the seacocks, battery monitor. Again, these are all ballpark prices. We've priced most of it on Amazon, but ultimately there's a bunch of things we haven't really put a price on yet. So we're looking at about $6,400 in expenses that we need, subtracted from what we have incoming. So here's our actual, money sheet. Our pay is going to be another almost $16,000 committed. Everything we sell is another $11,000 committed. So we're totaling on $26,000 that we're going to be able to spend to do this thing, minus the $6,400 that the boat needs. And we're looking at about $20,000 in our bank account when we leave. Again, that's very, very conservative. We have other money coming in. We have some other stuff going on that will help a little bit. But on the conservative safe side, we'll have $20,000 when it's time to go. We're planning on a monthly budget of about $1,000, so we should be able to cruise for about 20 months, or just shy of 2 years. There's a few other things to keep in mind. Candace is a seamstress. She has a lot of sewing equipment, and she'll be making money as we travel by doing seamstress work, sewing sails, sewing clothes, whatever it is, cushions. I'm going for my accreditation as a marine surveyor, so I'll be able to do marine surveys, which is like a home inspection for your boat. So there'll be some income there. We're not too worried about money, but this is just sort of an overview of where we stand right now. So, how are you guys going to get your boat from the Great Lakes to the ocean? We get asked that every once in a while. So, let me share with you the plan. I'm going to give you spend a couple minutes running through exactly what the plan is, and how we're going to make that possible, or how we're going to make that journey. So, right now we're in Lake St. Clair, right above the middle of the map here. It's a very, very small lake connected to the Great Lakes, and it's in between Lake Huron and Lake Erie. We want to get to down here at the southern area of Florida so that we can hop across the Bahamas, which is ultimately the goal. So there's two things that you need to be aware of in understanding how we're going to make this journey. One is the Erie Canal, which connects the top of Lake Erie to sort of the top of New York. And then the other thing to be aware of is the ICW, which is right here, which I'll explain in a minute. So sailboats only go about 11 kilometers an hour, give or take. It's about 6 knots that we plan on being able to maintain as an average speed. So in one day, we can only really do 40 or 50 miles comfortably. So on day one, we're going to leave Lighthouse Cove, where we've been sailing for years, and we're going to head between Windsor and Detroit under the Ambassador Bridge around to LaSalle, and we're going to stay right there for our first night. That puts us at about 5 hours worth of sailing that day, so nice easy day. Day two, we come out into Lake Erie, and then we have some decisions to make here. So in Lake Erie, we can make one straight shot up to Buffalo. It'll take about 2 days. And that'll put us in Buffalo within the end of the first week of leaving. Or if the weather's not very good, and we don't want to like take turns sleeping and do all that crazy stuff, we can jump into Erie, jump into like Port Dover, Port Colborne, Port Maitland. There's a whole bunch of little ports all the way along here that will make it easy, but it'll just take like an extra week to go up Lake Erie. So it might take us a week to get to Buffalo. It might take us 2 weeks to get to Buffalo. Once we're in Buffalo, things change a little bit. We have to take our mast down. The reason for that is up here in the Erie Canal, there's locks that change our elevation on the water, and to go in and out of those locks, you're not allowed to have a mast up. We'll leave Buffalo at the end of the first week or end of the second week, whichever it is based on weather, and then we motor up because now we've got our mast down. There's marinas in Buffalo that'll help us with that anyway. Then we get to the Erie Canal. In the Erie Canal, you have to pay a few $100s, but that gives you passage through all the locks. It gives you lots and lots of places to tie up and sleep for the night, because the locks typically don't run at night. But the locks and the whole Erie Canal go all the way across like upstate New York, Rochester, New York, lots of cool little towns. I've driven through here, and it's really, really beautiful in the fall when the trees are starting to change colors. So we'll take our sweet time, like it's going to take us a couple of weeks to make this trip, across Oneida Lake, and then eventually the Erie Canal ends right above Albany, New York, and it dumps out into the Hudson River. The Hudson River is where we put our mast back up and we become a sailboat again. And then we go with the current down the Hudson River for quite a ways, all the way through almost all of the state of New York. Ultimately, where you come out is right in Manhattan. So you come out right between mainland New York and Manhattan, New Jersey, and we'll find there's a lot of little anchorages and stuff around here where we can hang out. And then from New York, we might spend a few days there until it starts to get cold. Now we're probably toward middle of September, maybe end of September that we're going to be in New York. This is like a month and a half into our journey. From New York, you come out into the ocean, and this will be our first experience sailing in the ocean, which of course is obviously kind of scary. But once we're out in the ocean, you make a solid 2 days straight. So we'll take turns sleeping to get to the Delaware Bay. Once you're in the Delaware Bay, you're in protected waters again, so it's not too bad as long as the weather's good. And you can cross the C&D Canal into Chesapeake Bay. And Chesapeake Bay is very important because it's the capital of sailing in the U.S. And it's the home of Annapolis, which if you saw episode 4, Annapolis is where the sailboat show is that we went to in October that just passed, October of 2017, and we made a film about it and we put it on as our episode 4. From Annapolis, if we're there in October, we'll catch the boat show. If we're not, we won't. We're not really too committed to anything right now, as is life with sailing. When you're being powered by the wind, you kind of just go when there's wind. So if not, then we'll cruise through Chesapeake Bay, and then you have another kind of big decision to make. You can go out into the ocean and make your passage sort of all the way down to West Palm Beach, Florida, which obviously you're out in the ocean. It's, it's got its own risks, but it's fast. Or we can take the slow way. If you go in at Norfolk, Virginia, there's something called the Intracoastal Waterway. And what that is basically a ditch that's been cut into the side of the eastern seaboard of the U.S. You don't have to be out in the ocean, but you go through this little channel. It's slow, it's shallow most of the places. A lot of people hit the bottom or they get stuck, but it's safe. And that's like the conservative way to do this, is to follow the ICW all the way down to Florida. And then once we're in Florida, we're going to be around West Palm Beach, and then the waiting game begins. This is the Gulf. In the Gulf Stream, typically the the water goes up, headed north. So you want to wait till there's good wind and current arrangement before you actually jump across to the Grand Bahama Island. But once the weather is just perfect, you spend and I mean, mind you, this is 2.5, 3 months into the journey. This is it'll now be winter in Canada by the time we get down here. But once the weather is good, jump across to the Grand Bahama Island, and probably down to Nassau. And then sort of island hop around all the Caribbean islands. And this is kind of the realization of the dream. This is where it all sort of comes together. So beyond these islands, jump down to the Turks and Caicos, most likely. Dominican Republic, we'll go there. San Juan, British Virgin Islands. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we want to do and want to see all the way through all the Caribbean islands, ultimately ending in Grenada. Once we're in Grenada, we're under the hurricane belt, so we're safe for the following hurricane season. From there, we don't really have any plans. We're just going to sort of play it by ear. We might stay in the Caribbean islands. We might continue south to Venezuela. We might actually jump across and head up toward the Mediterranean and go see Italy and Spain and Greece and spend some time up in here. But it's all kind of up in the air. We're going to see which way the wind's blowing when we get there. So that's it. That's how we make it all work. If you liked this episode of Lady K Sailing, please consider joining us on Patreon, where you can send us as little as $1 or $2 every time we release a new episode. Your contribution helps us continue sharing this adventure and keeps the dream alive. Becoming a patron also gives you early access to new videos and the password to our secret treasures section at ladykSailing.com, where you can find all sorts of cool stuff.